A modern journey through ancient wisdom. Have you ever wondered why some businesses seem to create massive impact while others just create noise? What if I told you that the secret to modern business success has been around for over 2,000 years? After analyzing hundreds of successful companies and their strategies, I discovered something fascinating. They're all unknowingly following ancient wisdom that's more relevant today than ever before. In this video, I'll show you exactly how these timeless principles are transforming modern businesses and why understanding them could be the game changer you've been looking for. But before we dive in, I have something special for you. A complete guide on implementing these principles in your business. Stay until the end to learn how to get it. Let me introduce you to Sarah, a social media manager who discovered how ancient wisdom could transform her modern digital strategy. Outside her favorite coffee shop, the world seemed to be moving at an impossible pace, everyone absorbed in their own digital bubbles. That's when she remembered the conversation she'd had with her grandmother last weekend about some ancient stories that seemed surprisingly relevant to her modern life. "You know," her grandmother had said, settling into her favorite armchair with a cup of hand-ground coffee. She'd always refused to buy a Keurig. "There was once a teacher who changed the world, not through viral tweets or TED Talks, but through simple stories that anyone could understand." Sarah had raised an eyebrow, setting aside her phone for the first time that afternoon. Stories? Like fairy tales? Her grandmother's eyes sparkled with that knowing look Sarah had grown to love. More like life lessons wrapped in everyday situations. Imagine being in a crowd of people, all expecting some grand philosophical speech, and instead, this teacher starts talking about farming. Farming? Sarah couldn't hide her skepticism. As a social media manager for a tech startup, she couldn't imagine anything less relevant to her life. Yes, but bear with me. Picture this. It's a beautiful morning by a lake, and this young teacher, Jesus, gets into a boat to address the crowd gathered on the shore. The people are expecting something revolutionary, maybe even controversial. Instead, he tells them about a farmer spreading seeds. As her grandmother spoke, Sarah found herself transported to that ancient scene, but with a modern twist she could relate to: the social media influencer's tale, the parable of the sower. "Think of it like your work in social media," her grandmother explained, surprising Sarah with her grasp of digital marketing. "Some of your posts disappear instantly, swept away in the flood of information, just like seeds falling on a hard path. You know how it is. You spend hours crafting the perfect message, but it gets lost in the algorithm, never reaching its intended audience." Sarah nodded, thinking about her latest campaign that had flopped. That happens more often than I'd like to admit. Then there are those posts that get immediate attention. Lots of likes and shares, but there's no lasting impact. They're like seeds falling on shallow soil. They spring up quick but wither just as fast. "Remember that viral dance challenge your company tried?" Sarah groaned. "Don't remind me. We got thousands of likes, but zero actual product engagement." Exactly. Then there are messages that get buried under ads and sponsored content, choked out by the digital thorns of our age. But sometimes, just sometimes, your content finds its perfect audience. It takes root, grows, and creates real change. One person shares it with another, who shares it with 10 more, and suddenly your small seed of truth has grown into something magnificent. The startup story, the parable of the wheat and weeds. "But Grandma," Sarah interjected, thinking about her company's latest crisis, "what about all the fake reviews and toxic comments? My boss wants me to delete everything negative immediately." Her grandmother adjusted her reading glasses thoughtfully. "That reminds me of another story Jesus told about a business owner who discovered that someone had sabotaged his wheat field by planting weeds." She went on to describe a modern parallel. A startup founder discovers toxic employees damaging company culture. The HR team wants to fire everyone suspected of causing problems, but the wise CEO says, "Wait, in trying to remove the troublemakers, we might lose some of our best talent." Sometimes people who seem difficult today become our strongest team members tomorrow. That's actually pretty relevant to what we're dealing with, Sarah mused, thinking about the recent team conflicts at work. The story teaches us about the wisdom of patience and the danger of hasty judgments. In your world of instant reactions and cancel culture, maybe that's more relevant than ever. The movement maker, the parable of the mustard seed. Here's another one I think you'll appreciate, her grandmother continued, pulling up an article on her tablet, surprising Sarah with her tech savviness. Jesus compared the kingdom of heaven to a tiny mustard seed that grows into a huge tree. Today, we might compare it to how the biggest movements often start with the smallest actions. She showed Sarah a story about how a single tweet had sparked a global environmental movement. One Swedish teenager sitting alone outside her parliament building turned into millions of young people fighting for climate change awareness. That's the mustard seed principle. Never underestimate small beginnings. Like how our company started in my CEO's garage, Sarah asked, beginning to see the connections. Exactly. Every major change in history started with something small. Apple, Google, Amazon, they all started in garages. The civil rights movement gained momentum from individual acts of courage. Even the biggest social media platforms started with just one user, one post, one share. The culture shifter? The parable of the yeast. Or think about how company cultures change, her grandmother added, refilling their coffee cups. Jesus compared his message to yeast working through dough. Today, imagine one person in a toxic workplace who decides to be consistently kind and helpful. They don't make a big show of it. They just quietly do the right thing, day after day. Like that new guy in marketing who started bringing coffee for everyone, Sarah remembered. Now the whole floor does coffee runs for each other. Precisely. 6 months later, the whole office dynamic has shifted. People are more collaborative, more supportive. That's the power of positive influence. It works invisibly, but transforms everything it touches. It's like those viral kindness challenges you see online, but more authentic and lasting. As the evening light faded outside, Sarah found herself looking at her phone differently. Her social media feeds were still full of the usual chaos, political arguments, viral trends, marketing pitches. But now she saw something else too, opportunities for planting seeds, growing movements, and being the yeast that could transform her digital community. You know, Grandma, she said, scrolling through her company's social media dashboard, these stories might be ancient, but they're incredibly relevant to everything I'm dealing with. It's not just about getting likes and shares. It's about creating lasting impact. Her grandmother nodded, a knowing smile playing on her lips. That's the beauty of these parables. They're not just stories, they're mirrors that show us truths about ourselves and the world around us. They remind us that small actions matter, that change takes time, and that sometimes the most powerful influences are the ones we can't see. Sarah opened her content calendar app, her mind racing with new ideas. Maybe we've been approaching our social media strategy all wrong. Instead of chasing viral moments, we should be focusing on creating content that actually helps people, that grows over time, that plants seeds, her grandmother suggested with a wink. Exactly, Sarah laughed. And maybe some will fall on rocky ground, and some will get lost in the noise, but some will find good soil and grow into something amazing. As Sarah drove home that evening, she couldn't help but think about how these ancient stories were still teaching people to see the world differently, one simple tale at a time. In her pocket, her phone buzzed with notifications, but for once she didn't feel the urge to check them immediately. She was too busy thinking about seeds and soil, wheat and weeds, mustard seeds and yeast, and how she might use her own digital platform to plant something meaningful in the vast field of social media. Her grandmother's final words echoed in her mind. The greatest changes often start with the smallest actions. In your world of viral trends and instant fame, remember that true impact usually grows slowly, quietly, but inevitably, just like yeast in dough or a tiny mustard seed becoming a mighty tree. Maybe, Sarah thought, pulling into her driveway, that's exactly what her corner of the digital world needed. Not more noise, but more seeds of truth, planted with patience and tended with care, waiting for the right moment to grow into something extraordinary.